what does it mean to be good? Is the urf determines it. So if the nature and the custom of these women is that they need a bit more time from their husbands, then you give it to them. Does that make sense?
Because the stigma that if you spend time with your wife, like, this guy, he's soft and so on and so forth.
A woman whose love language is quality time, you're reading your book, you've got your arm around her for 2 hours, she's lying down in your lap for 2 hours, she's thinking you don't give her any time.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, welcome to Relationship Goals. I've hijacked the podcast. I am the captain now, so inshallah. It's nice to have a fresh face on the podcast. Would you agree?
Where's Abbas?
You have to ask him.
Abbas.
You have to ask him.
Huh?
Are you allowed to use his name now?
Sorry.
Or is he
Mr.
still?
Wavy.
Or is he still on? Is he still on that?
I don't know. I think people know his name now.
People know his name. He mentions it publicly. Okay, so yeah, Abbas. He has decided to step down from the show temporarily, maybe untemporarily. Allahu alam. But if you see him, you'll see
He's
him.
going through something in life. It's not bad, but it's he's just.
No, he's just busy.
Yeah, basically he's going through something.
Yeah. You made it sound as if like.
I said it's not bad.
Yeah, but even just the default of he's going through something was like, whoa, what's he going through? Like,
I mean, I'm not lying when I say he's busy.
big sound that he's going through divorce. That the brother's not even married yet.
I mean, he's single. On Relationship Goals, he's single. We actually have a married host now.
Alhamdulillah. So now we've got two married perspectives. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Married.
Huh? Bro, you baited out you got you. Unless you're trying to,
I'm joking, I'm married, yeah, of course.
if you got you must be married.
Alhamdulillah.
Oh, phew, you scared us. I thought it was a...
Abbas just walked in.
and literally Abbas has walked into the room.
He's doing, Akhi? He's very busy. He can't come on the show because...
Whoa, that's mad. That's
he's going to bleep that. He's going to bleep that. Don't worry, he's going to bleep that. He's going to bleep that.
That's the cut. I don't know
You
why.
might as well not bleep it. You might as well leave it there.
I don't know why he's finding that so funny. Okay, so in today's episode, inshallah, we are going to be talking about the issue of time. How much time you spend with your spouse, the pros and the cons, and the different perspectives that people have regarding this, because it's quite interesting. I've met many brothers on many different ends of the spectrum, but we'll get into that. First of all, the question I want to ask you, Imran, is what does Islam tell us in terms of how much time a husband should be giving to his wife?
Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Before beginning, I have to just mention, because this is the official Sunnah Match podcast, since we're back, we're going to have a promo offer, inshallah ta'ala. And we don't do many promo offers anymore, if you guys have been following. But because we're back, and we have to have a we're back promo offer. So inshallah ta'ala, we're going to call it Goals Are Back. Goals Are Back. And inshallah ta'ala, it's going to be 60% off lifetime access. So it will be available if you click the link below. Inshallah ta'ala, Goals Are Back. But like I said, our offers are running high and dry recently because alhamdulillah, the offers are, how do you put it?
I've got no idea what you're talking about.
They're beneficial for you and not for us.
Okay.
I'm not going to say they're not completely beneficial, but you know what I mean. So anyway, inshallah.
I mean, the other day, one of these brothers was comparing you, man, to DFS, saying that you've always got a sale on.
I think that's unfair. We haven't had offers. I think we had like 2 or 3 since January. Yeah, it's not been much. So anyway, to answer the question, Allahu Alam, I don't know any textual evidence. It's calm. They're still signing up. I don't know of any clear-cut evidence that mentions the amount of time that a person should spend with their spouse. But I know that the Quran, it does give a principle, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, live with your wives in good. Does that make sense? So scholars generally mention that, when it comes to dealing with your wife, it's down to like, how do you deal with your wife in good? It's different for communities, societies, cultures, places, times. So for example, like when it comes to nafaqah, money, living in one part of the world, what is considered good, like good maintenance for your wife, is considered poor maintenance for your wife in another part of the world. Like for example, the UK is a bit more expensive than maintaining your spouse, for example, in Pakistan. So like if you try to maintain your wife in the UK on a maintenance of a wife in Pakistan, it's like, well, you guys, you're going to be depriving her of a lot of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the principle here is not like give her X amount of money or speak to her in X way or whatever have you. Is speak to her in a just be good to her. And what determines goodness here is the norms of the people, the urf, the customs. Does that make sense? And the customs is something very, 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 very unique. Like it goes a very long way. And there's many things that it opens up, and perhaps we could discuss it in future podcasts, inshallah ta'ala. But I don't know, like I said, of any particular evidence that specifies an amount of time. Wallahu a'lam, it may come down to the urf of the people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, for example, in some communities, some societies, men and women don't, generally speaking, spend that much time with each other. Does that make sense? And some, they spend a lot of time. Do you see? But a lot of it, I think, also comes down to actually communicating with your wife and knowing what your wife or your husband is, what kind of person they are, what kind of love language they are, how much they need in terms of you spending time with them. Does that make sense? And as long as they're not being excessive, I think it should be given to them, because it can come under the general principle of living with your spouses in good. Does that make sense?
So when you say excessive, like how do we quantify that? Because obviously, like I know some brothers who, along birth, they get married, they disappear. You don't see them again. Maybe you see them once every few years, and that's it. It's, when you do see them, it's like, yeah, you're right. What happened?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean what happened? Like, it's kind of. But then on the other end, you've got brothers who completely just do their own thing. They're with the mandem all the time. They're always out. Not the wife's at home alone. So how do you kind of?
So we can discuss the excessiveness from the angle of what's excessively haram and what's excessively just like not good for you.
Okay.
So one is going to be haram, one's going to be just personal preference. Yeah. So in terms of what is excessively haram, for example, is if you're spending so much time with your spouse that it's making you fall short on your religious duties. And this is a characteristic of the hypocrites. For example, in Surah Al-Fath, Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions, سيقول لك المخلفون من الأعراب, that the Bedouins who didn't come and stayed behind from battle, they'll come to you, Muhammad, and they will say to you, شغلتنا أموالنا وأهلنا. They'll say we became busy with our wealth and with our families. Our families became busy. Our wealth, we became busy. We became busy with work, finances, career, wife, kids, so on and so forth. شغلتنا أموالنا وأهلنا فاستغفر لنا. Ask Allah to forgive us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يقولون بألسنتهم. They say with their tongues that which is not inside their hearts. It's not really that they didn't come because they were too busy with their wives or their wealth. These people, they were just what? They just never had it in them to come and pray or come to the masjid and pray in the congregation or to seek knowledge or to go hajj and umrah and to give sadaqah and what. They never had it, but they used their family members as an excuse. So the point is that if you're a person who you find yourself falling short in religious obligations and you're like, family, okay, I'm spending time with family, this, that, and the other, whatnot, family. That's problematic because this is a characteristic of the hypocrites. Now, some people use it as an excuse. Some people may genuinely actually be busy because they're with family. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But now you have to ask yourself, that which you're busy with your family, is that impeding on one of Allah's rights? Does that make sense? Is that impeding one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rights? For example, you may not be able to give sadaqah because you've got to give nafaqah to your wife. Does that make sense? So no one's going to attack you for saying, subhanallah, look at you. You spend all your money and all your time on your wife. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just because you don't give any sadaqah. Don't you give any charity? Well, why? Because your financial situation may be one that, sadaqah is not obligatory. It's recommended. I'm not talking about zakat. Sadaqah is recommended. But whereas you maintaining your wife is what? It's obligatory. Does that make sense? But then the question comes to mind, are you over giving her nafaqah? Like, are you giving her nafaqah above and beyond? Like, as in, there's a balance. What I'm saying? There's a balance. So you have to ask yourself, are you being real? A lot of people aren't real. When they fall short on their religious duties, they use their family members as an excuse. They were never going to do it anyway. And some people, what they do is, no, they actually are with their family members. But you know what the problem is? They actually prefer to be with their wife more than they prefer to be with Allah. They prefer to be with their children more than Allah. They prefer to spend their money on their families more than they prefer to spend it in the path of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. From people that there are those that take equals besides Allah. And they love them. They have someone and they love them the way they should love Allah. Some people, they love their wives more than they love Allah. some wives love their husbands more than they love Allah. That's worse. The ones who love their wives the way they love Allah, these people are already kuffar. Does that? Or yeah, they've made as in the love which is unique for Allah. They've given that same love to their wife, made them equal in love. That's shirk billahi azza wa jal. What about the one who loves more his wife than Allah? What about the one who loves his wife? He doesn't even love Allah in the first place. Does that make sense? But Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. The ones who love Allah, the ones who are believers in Allah, they are very, very, very intense and strong in their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why they're able to leave their bed at night and say, I'm going to pray. Wife says, come, hug me, cuddle me, this, that. He said, I'm going to Allah. I love him more than you. You know, he's given her, he's maintained, he's spent money on his wife, he does good for her, she's not suffering, she's got clothes, she's got food, he spends night based on the urf, you know, if she needs, you know, a holiday every now and again, or he takes care of her. But then he's got money aside to spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's got family time, he's got time in the masjid. He prays his salawat in the masjid. At the very least, Fajr and Isha, he prays in the masjid. He has time for knowledge. He seeks knowledge. He says to his wife, sorry, don't disturb me right now. I'm seeking knowledge. I'm just من سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله به سهل الله له به طريقا إلى الجنة. I'm taking my path to Jannah. I'm seeking knowledge. Does that make sense? He doesn't feel like some people feel awkward about upsetting their wife because he's going to tell her. Like you speak to some men and say, Akhi, you know, he's like, yeah, I'm trying to advise my wife. I don't want to be too, you know, with her. I don't want to be like too apparent with her about what's halal, what's haram. So you're more awkward around her than you are around Allah. And what I mean by that, sorry, is that you feel more awkward about offending her as opposed to offending Allah Azza wa Jal. Do you know what I'm saying?
In what sense? Like, give an example.
Like, for example, there was one brother who was getting married. He wasn't actually married at the time. And he was marrying a girl who didn't pray 5 times a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I told him, I said, Akhi, don't marry her if she don't pray 5 times a day. I mean, on one view of the scholars, she would be a disbeliever.
Yeah.
And another view, it's like she is a outright fajira, fasiqa. Like she's like as in
one of the highest sins.
Yeah, I mean, some scholars say if you don't pray, you're gonna go jail. The punishment is jail. As in either the punishment is that you're an apostate.
Yeah.
And there is the punishment for the apostate in that regard, and that's obviously within Islamic context, due process, court, legal system. It's not vigilante behavior, whatever have you. Or some scholars say, okay, she's not going to get the council punishment, or he or she is going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm using examples of wife, and I think I'm probably doing that more so because I'm a guy and I usually speak to guys, but it's the same, as in if there's a wife who's got a husband, or you know what I'm saying. So he used to look to marry, and I was like, you got to tell her, pray 5 times a day. He said, bro, I don't want to be too hard on her. I don't want to like tell her straight away. And they're divorced now, by the way. It's been I think a year and a half to got divorced. So he was like, you know, what happened? We didn't really see eye to eye religiously. Do you know what I'm saying? So from the beginning, you should have just told her, as in, you just don't be shy to let them know. There's a difference between wisdom.
That's what I was gonna say. I do believe that when it comes to certain issues, maybe not the like if something is obligatory or it's like clear cut haram, then no doubt, you know, it should be pointed out. But there's a certain way to go about it as well.
No, 100%. You know, there's 2 extremes. I remember something Mr. Abdul Rahman said to me, because there was one brother who, for example, he used to kind of hang around us, and we wouldn't really like tell him, your bro, this is wrong, stop it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We kind of dealt with him in a way of kind of like a passive way, and trying to use wisdom. We were trying to use wisdom.
Yeah.
Hopefully he would learn and see the brotherhood, the environment, and like sometimes if you advise him, he would get very annoyed. He just didn't like to take advice.
Yeah.
So I remember Mr. Abdurrahman spent quite a long time with his brother one time, and one time he just kind of just told him what time it was, innit?
Yeah.
As in advised him. And when he did so, I remember he said to me on the phone, he said, Imran, he said, sometimes when you're trying to do this wisdom thing, really it's not wisdom, it's that you're actually you're suspending the Sharia of Allah Azza wa Jal. You're trying to do the ibtar of the Sharia of Allah Azza wa Jal. You're actually not implementing Allah's Sharia. If the guy, if she's gonna, or if he's gonna lash out by you telling them what Allah Azza wa Jal wanted to hear, or what Allah wants from them, that person maybe is not good for you. Does that make sense?
That's the thing. It comes down to wisdom in it. In certain situations, you're gonna have to lay down a smack down. Yeah. And in certain situations, you're gonna have to take it nice, slow, easy. You don't have to smack down. I'm not talking about physical violence. I'm just talking about
like metaphorically. But I'm saying it doesn't mean that you like, as in some men, some women are very like, a lot of men are like, for example, have to do this, have to do that. Can't explain it. Like, for example, you know it is sometimes. Remember. Yeah, the way you might, if you're more practicing than your spouse, husband more practicing than wife, or wife more practicing than husband. Yeah. You may need to remember at the end of you're teaching them, innit?
Yeah.
You're teaching them things that really are infantile in the Deen, things that you teach infants. Does that make sense? And what is one of the things that you always hear from infants when they were being taught by their parents? They were like, parents told us what to do, but they didn't tell us why.
Why? Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you can't just tell your wife. I mean, technically you can tell her, but it's not really wise to just tell her without explaining it to her. Walk her through the park, find the right time, find the right place. Like Sheikh Abdul Karim Khudayz, he has a beautiful lecture on how a student of knowledge should maintain his family. And one of the things he talks about, for example, like look, your wife is gonna need things from you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the benefits of you providing for your wife and her not being the breadwinner in the house. Does that make sense? Because she needs things from you. When someone needs things from you, what are they likely to do?
Listen.
Like to listen. That's why in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, when the two prisoners came to him inside the prison to ask him for the interpretation of the dream, they needed something from him. So he used that as an opportunity to give them da'wah to tawheed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So obviously scholars took from that some of the people of knowledge took from that when you want to advise someone or tell them something, tell them when they want something from you, because then they're listening. Imagine you're trying to tell them and they're just busy in their own world. But when the moment he says, yo, can I borrow some money? Can I ask you for some help? Can I get this? Yeah, but wait, let me talk to you about something first. Because he needs something, he's going to listen. So now if your wife needs nafaqah from you, maintenance from you, might need a car, might need a house, might some clothes, might want a gift, might want a special holiday.
Yeah.
And she doesn't work, you provide for her. Maybe she does, but her money is whatever, and you have to provide for her. So, you know what you do, the Sheikh said? Is to say to her, listen, you want a new car? Okay, I'll tell you what you do, inshallah ta'ala. I'll give you 6 months, memorize all the adhkar from the morning remembrances. The dhikr that you do in the morning and the evening. Memorize it. Don't you memorize it, do it. 6 months, I'll get you the car that you want, inshallah ta'ala. Does that make sense? So for example, your wife may not pray. Okay, no problem, honey. Inshallah ta'ala, you want to do this? But pray though. I want to see you pray 5 times a day. That's like one thing you can do.
Yeah.
That's one technique that you can use. Does that make sense?
Because it's true, because even me, like I've experienced myself, let's say like I'll come home from a very long, tiring day at work, and then like if someone might point out, like your wife might point out, okay, by the way, like you didn't do this, and it's just like in that moment, it's just like, please, just like But afterwards, like once you've rested a bit, then it's like, okay, so what was that thing you were mentioning? Yeah. So it's kind of like it's one of them ones where you just have to know time and place makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
It can make the biggest thing so small and the smallest thing so big if 100%. You don't get that right.
100%.
And that I think comes with experience.
And a woman might be sitting here thinking, well, then how do I advise my husband? Because as in, when can I tell him something when he's in need of me? As in, like, I understand. As in, a man, it's very easy for his wife to be in need for him.
Yeah.
Why?
I'll say because she provides for her, so on and so forth.
So the woman's like, how can I do that if I want to teach my husband something?
I'll say intimacy is a big one.
There you go. But the thing is, feminists will tell you no. But the reality of the matter is that a man, in some cases, may be in more need of a woman than she is of a man, because that woman may be able to still maybe work herself. She may be able to still get money from her family. Maybe nowadays social security, and government benefits will provide for you. But that man, he's in real need of you, because he can't get what he needs from you, from anyone but you.
Unless he's got multiple wives.
And then you're gonna have a problem with that, innit? So then she should just consider that. Does that make sense? And when a man is in,
have you done an episode on polygamy?
No, I really. We're working up to it.
Okay.
It's gonna be a few.
Okay.
There's gonna be a few, inshallah ta'ala.
You're gonna have 4 episodes, one for each.
Wait, then Abbas, you wanna come back for the polygamy episode? Do you wanna come back for the polygamy episode? Or you wanna leave it to Abu Bakr? I think Abbas having withdrawal symptoms as we speak. But the point I'm making is,
I think we asked him about maybe 10 times.
Yeah, literally. I'm very Abbas is he's like he's matured. He's high property right now. We say Abbas' price has gone up. Allah barik.
He's appreciated in value.
Allah barik. Abbas is doing that. Go to where you appreciate, not where go to where you celebrate, not where you tolerate thing.
Allah barik. Practicing what you preach.
Yeah. So basically, the point we're making is that in intimacy, a woman can really use that as an opportunity to get her husband.
In like what?
I'm not saying intimacy, but I'm saying she can use the whole concept of intimacy. Does that make sense? Now, like for example, just give him a bit extra. Does that make sense? Why are you laughing?
Am I laughing? I didn't laugh.
Like, make you feel mad awkward.
I'm just smiling.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is definitely don't deprive him of his rights. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But like, for example, look, your husband may not tell you to always dress up for him every day, this, that, and the other. But like, some days just make, even though he's not asking you, you should. You should
Make an extra
generally,
effort.
but just make that extra effort for him. Does that make sense? Be extra sweet, be extra gentle. Does that make sense?
But that works both ways, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
The husband should also make an effort,
Of
and
course,
you can't be one of them ones where at home you're just like some
of course.
smelly pig, and then when you
Of
go
course.
outside, you'll comb your beard,
No, of course.
freshen up, nice thobe.
I actually want to do an episode just on this because the Prophet Ali Sallallahu every time he would come home, before he would do anything, what was the first thing he'd do in his house? He'd clean his teeth for his wife, just because he didn't want her to experience bad breath. And Abdullah ibn Abbas would always comb his hair. He said, the way I like my wife to be beautified for me, I like to beautify myself for her. So that's a separate episode, inshallah ta'ala. But the point of the matter is that, you can do that. Now, from my advice, what I would say is men are not usually so focused on listening after the intimacy, but it's before the intimacy. You're gonna be able to get through to him, inshallah. Because just afterwards, if you speak to men, mostly it's kind of just chill kind of thing. Does that make sense? And you may not get his focus like that. But why are you laughing, bro? Yeah.
Bro, I was not laughing.
I've asked you to be mature about these things.
Man's not laughing, like. I wasn't laughing. The camera's there. I wasn't laughing.
Feels like you're smiling.
I was smiling. Yeah, man. I had to smile.
My bad.
I'm happy right now.
Allah barik. But before, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you got to kind of time it. I would say not directly before, because at that time he's not thinking either about whatever. Does that make sense? But it's just on the build up. Does that make sense? On the build up and whatnot. That's it, and that's where you'll get him to listen to you. Does that make sense? We digressed a lot though. The point we're making is about spending time. So my point is, you could spend time with your spouse, and you should spend time with your spouse. There's a level that, based on the urf, will dictate how much it is. But then spending too much time could lead to you impeding on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rights. Does that make sense? Your wife should know that she never comes before the religion. Like, nowadays, women will get offended if you tell her, my mom comes before you. Actually, if a man says that to his wife, she'll get offended, bro. She'll get so like women like it, that as in the way that they've been built nowadays and the way that society has built it, as if this is my wife and she's the most important person to me, and that's incorrect.
Yeah.
Your wife is not the most important person to you. Does that make sense? There's levels before your wife. I'm not saying your wife's not important, but there's levels before your wife. For example, Allah is the highest level. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does that make sense? Your parents. Your wife is definitely up there. Don't get it twisted. You don't oppress your wife to please your parents. You don't do that. That's another extreme.
A whole other episode as well.
Yeah. You don't oppress your wife to please them. But at the same time, your wife needs to know she doesn't come before your mother. She doesn't come before mum. No, not at all. So, if you tell some women that, they'll be like, what? Don't be so offended. Don't be so hurt. Even if she's not trying to get in the way between you and your mum, but she will get hurt by that. No, she needs to be told. So same way you need to tell her that, or she needs to know that, of course, tell her in a nice way. Hopefully you don't need to tell her, she understands. But, if you find her getting in the way of you and your mum, you might have to just tell her in a nice way. It's all about being nice. It's not that, hey, listen, you'll never come before my mum. It's more about, honey, rights of my mum are the most pressing rights. Of all the human beings, she's first.
So question, would it be the same vice versa? Or no, because the husband would be higher for the wife than...
So for example, like Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he discusses this. I think also Imam Subki rahimahullah ta'ala, is a risala pertaining to parents. He alluded to it. Like for example, if a woman is told by her parents to come visit, or as in she cannot visit her parents without her husband's permission. Does that make sense? But her husband doesn't need parents' permission, because the husband now, he takes the place of the father as the guardian, meaning he's not her father, but taken with her. Does that make sense? The husband should not prohibit her. The husband should not prohibit her.
Should be just.
It's clear. He may fall into haram from...
Unless he's got a specific reason for doing so.
But the point is that now the wife has to... the husband is basically the one that she has to please. Does that make sense? And Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who decreed this. Does that make sense? And you'll find most women are like that as well. I'll tell this story to kind of illustrate this, yeah? to show you how a woman would naturally put her husband before her father anyway. I mentioned this in a previous episode, but we deleted it because me and Abbas felt like, at the time it was going to be misunderstood, the story. But the story is got a powerful lesson in there. So there was a wife, she came and complained to her father about her husband. She came and complained to her father about her husband. And when she complained about her husband, the father said, okay, bring your husband. So when the husband came, what the father did is he grabbed his daughter's dress and he ripped it. Does that make sense? Which is awkward. I don't think anyone should do such a thing to their daughter. But in his mind, he wanted to show her a point that when he ripped her dress, what would she do? She would immediately go and run behind the husband, not the father. Does that make sense? So it's inappropriate for a father to rip his daughter's dress. No one's.
Is it? It's a story. You mean it's not actual? It's one of them Layla stories, as in like the dunya. It's not.
Yeah, I think it's
not an actual example that actually happened.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a story that's been passed down.
It's one of those.
Yeah, it's been passed down, and it's got a powerful lesson in there, which is that when she did that, who did she run behind?
Her husband.
The husband. So the father said, the same way you ran behind your husband right now and you find security in him over me, stay like that. Don't come to me complaining about him again when at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Like, he is your main guy now. Does that make sense? And that's what it is. Like, a man, he raises his daughter really for another man. Does that make sense?
Because going to choose that man carefully as a father.
Choose that man carefully. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's a whole other episode as well.
That's why you should really love your daughters and put a lot of love in them that hopefully they would not want to get
married. Not to say that, a wife or even a husband should never involve their parents. Obviously, it may get to a stage, or there might be a particular situation, scenario where you might need to involve them. But generally speaking, no doubt, it's always best try and resolve it amongst yourselves.
Yeah, or if
once you involve other people, it can get really messy.
Yeah, or maybe like Allah Azza wa Jalla say, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا إِنْ يُرِيدَا إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. That if you feel like you're going to separate, then you.
But that's the point, though, isn't it? When you get to that level where you're about to separate.
Yeah, and that's after you've done, you've given the reminder, you've boycotted her in the bed, or whatever have you, and you've done all those things. So it's only after that, and even then the scholars mentioned, don't get a person, when you get someone from each person's family to to be the mediator between the two of you, as in one from her family, one from his family. Don't get someone who's going to create fitna. Get someone who knows, who's going to have some knowledge, some justice, you know what I'm saying? So the point of the matter is that, what do you call it? Your wife needs to know your deen comes first. A husband needs to know deen comes first. Does that make sense? I mean, a lot of your deen is going to actually revolve around your husband. Does that make sense? Like, for example, sunnah fasts. A wife can't do without her husband's permission. Does that make sense? So a lot of a woman's deen is her husband. Like, a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked her, where are you with regards to your husband? Like how, and she said, I try my best, whatever I can to please him. And the Prophet ﷺ said to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, then just always be conscious where you are with your husband, because that's your place in the next life. As in, like, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that, how a wife is with her husband will indicate where she's going to be in the next life. Does that make sense? Whereas a man has, and to be honest, some women will say that's not oppressive in any shape or form. If anything, that's slightly easy, because you have no idea what it's like to balance parents, work,
studies,
wife,
religion,
children, studies, all that. You just have to, Allah barik, just make sure you just make one guy happy. Husbands have to
kids as well. If you've got kids,
of course. But kids are a bit, I don't want to say easier, but I'm saying kids are not really fighting for your love like that, innit? Yeah. And so, well, they are, to be fair. But, it's not as complicated.
Both have their
I mean, your kids are going to understand if you say, I'm going to see my mum. You know what I'm saying? Wife is where it gets sticky. So the point of the matter is that each person should know my deen comes first, so they don't spend so much time as to violate the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
The other thing was where it's not excessive in terms of it being haram, spending too much time with her, but it's excessive in terms of your personal preference. And that really comes down to yarhamakallah. That comes down to you not being smart when you're picking a spouse. Does that make sense?
Have you done a previous episode on?
We've done a previous episode and we'll link it below. Hopefully Jimmy will link it below. The first video that came out yesterday, he forgot to put the link in there. Hopefully we'll link it, inshallah ta'ala, for this. But we did an episode on love languages, and I really request everyone to watch it, because you need to work out what each other's love language is before you even marry. And you can do that by asking the right questions. Like, when you have a marriage meeting, it's all like a CV. So how many verses have you memorized from the Quran? And you know how much? How many books in Shafi'i fiqh have you studied? As in, it's like a CV. That makes sense. But we
Or
don't.
she's like Hanbali or
Say that again.
or she's Hanbali or Maliki.
She's Hanbali. Tell her keep it stepping. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Is that how far the madhab fanatics go?
I'm joking, but you know, there was a time when like it was a joke. The Hanafis and the Shafi'iyah, they would say, "Don't marry each other too." They'd go that far. They would say
Wow.
that's what they did as a joke in it. Like they would say, "Our women, our Shafi'i women, are not allowed to marry the Hanafi men and whatnot." So it was a joke. It was a joke. But the point of the matter is that, but I'll be honest, you know, this fiqh stuff creates big problems in relationships, bro.
No, I can imagine. Imagine like you got differing views.
Like for example, a wife says, a wife follows, for example, Shafi'i madhab, or like another madhab, and she says doesn't see the obligation of the niqab. But the husband's Hanbali, he's dying with the niqab. Does that make sense? Do a separate episode on that, inshallah ta'ala.
Yeah.
I'm joking. You could honestly, the whole madhab thing was a joke. Don't restrict based on madhab, unless the guy is a fanatic or the woman is a fanatic. If they're a fanatic, then maybe don't marry them. If your madhab is that different, but generally speaking, it's not an issue. I was just joking. Okay, the point of the matter is that, you know, it's down to personal preference. So you need to, at the marriage meeting, above and beyond just finding out the facts and figures, you know, their grade point average and whatnot, you need to ask them
The what?
grade point average, their GPA.
Okay.
It's how they measure your score in America, like your grades.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Every now and again, I make references for our fellow peers
United
across the pond.
Statesians.
Huh?
United Statesians.
United Statesians and the Canadians.
Oh, the Canadians as well.
Yeah. We know it's Americans. So basically, you have to ask at the time, so what's your love language? How do you experience love? How do you receive it? If her love language is quality time, and he just can't, as in, when a guy says, I don't like clingy girls, you know what he means? He basically is hinting at my love language is not quality time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, okay, if you're thinking I don't like clingy girls, it may be that it is quality time, but not too much. So don't take it as
We've
a
done
rule
an
of thumb.
episode on love languages.
We have, yeah. That's one I said Jimmy's gonna link, inshallah, if he remembers to. But I'm saying that you need to, because you're giving her time and she's always saying what to you, and you're thinking, bro, I give you like what?
Hella time.
I give you like an hour every day, Allah barik. Some women, an hour, she's Allah barik happy with it because her love language is not quality time. Her love language is what? Words of affirmation. So in that 1 hour, you just speak to her. You're beautiful. I love you. You mean so much to me. I appreciate everything you did in the house. Affirming through words your love for her. Does that make sense? Some women, it's like, bro, it's not about quality time for me. It's a gift. So every day you bring her, some days you bring her a rose, some day you bring her a Kinder Bueno, some day you bring her a drink. Every now and again you bring her a bigger gift. You know, just, I'm thinking about you. You know what I'm saying? Some people, their love language is about it's physical touch, or it's more about the hugs, the kisses, the touches, the cuddles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As in, you may be in your house,
Yeah.
both on the sofa, she's doing her thing, you're reading,
Yeah.
you're revising, but you're hugging her the whole time. For 2 hours, you gave her the attention through physical touch. She's happy. But a woman whose love language is quality time, you're reading your book, you've got your arm around her for 2 hours, she's lying down in your lap for 2 hours, she's thinking, you don't give her any time.
Yeah, at the end when you're about to get up, like, okay, come on, I'm gonna go. She's like, oh, well, you didn't spend any time together.
Yeah, you were focused on your phone, or you're focused, because love language are different. So I'm saying this comes down to personal preference. Does that make sense? So maybe you married the wrong person. Now, if you're married, you have to ask yourself.
Also, I think it's important for people to be able to pick stuff like that up. A lot of people, they just like dose, like, what's the right word? Like the senses are dull. Like they don't pick up. Oh wait, my husband likes this. Oh wait, my wife needs this. Oh wait, like these are things you should make an active attempt. Because then otherwise you won't know your spouse.
It's so sad, man. Like there was like people. You know, I clocked something. People don't listen to people that are experienced.
People don't
listen to people that are experienced. Like, you know, they don't listen to people that are experienced, innit? What
do you mean? I was like you've told people.
I'm saying as in you're not gonna know this stuff unless you listen to someone who's walked it, right?
Yeah.
So they really like this. This is one of the reasons we did relationship goals, because we really want to educate people on this stuff, man. Because bro, like marriage is a complex institution. Like you will go to uni and you will do a master's degree to learn how to manage a company. But managing a company is not anywhere near as complex as managing a relationship with your wife.
I mean, it depends on your employees, isn't it?
even then, because you can sack them quickly. But a wife, it's like talaq is, you know, and she's got kids, it's long, you know what I'm saying? So the point of the matter is that it's long, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to learn this stuff. People don't, so that's why I really advise people to relationship goals. But you know what, people still don't listen. Like, I remember recently there was a couple that wanted to get married, innit? And I kind of advised them because there was something that they were both willing to get married, even though they never investigated this about themselves. And I was like, I think you lot need to get to know each other a little bit more before you do it. Does that make sense? And they were like just so blinded by the notion of marriage.
Yeah.
But now they're married.
Which is common. People, when they start practicing,
Yeah.
one of the first things they want to complete half your deen.
You know what I'm saying? And I was like, bro, I'm just advising you. I wouldn't do it right now. Wait it out. Get to know each other a little bit more. I told the sister the same thing. Advised. They were like, no. Ready. I'm perfect. I've done my istikhara. I'm ready. I said, okay, no problem. Allah bless you guys. I mean, and they're going through big problems right now. And literally, the problems were pertaining to what I advised them on. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, just listen, like really slow down, breathe, relax. You know what I'm saying? Lift your brain back up to your head, your mind. People think with their waist and their organ between their thighs. Men, mostly, yeah? Women just think with, you know, I'm just going to get out my house. Alhamdulillah, finally. But you're going to move to a guy who's going to be not good. My point is, marriage meeting, really get to know each other. Who is this
We've
man?
done an episode on marriage meeting?
I don't think we've done it justice. We need to, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay.
Here and there. But then the other extreme, Abu Bakr, which we haven't touched upon, is the person who doesn't spend too much time with their spouse.
Who
doesn't spend enough time with their spouse.
Okay, yeah. That's what I was going to come to. So this is funny because it comes down to, again, as you mentioned, there's, you know, a spectrum, and within that spectrum there's an acceptable, you know, allowance kind of thing. But you did mention, you know, if a person, you know, they spend, sorry, no, you're talking about not giving the rights to Allah. But yeah, because there are some people, you know, who might always be out with their friends and they don't give enough time to their wife, or as you mentioned, they're always giving time to their family and not hardly spend any time with their wife, especially if you're in a situation where, you know, you're living with your family. So she's living with her in-laws, and you're always out, and she has to kind of, you know, be at home, and, you know, that in that kind of situation. Obviously, there is a caveat, which is, for example, if you're someone like us, for example, you know, who's involved in da'wah, and, you know, you have quite a hectic lifestyle, not so much now because of Corona, but generally before, traveling a lot, very, very often, for sometimes long periods of time, you know, Umrah multiple times a year, other trips, so on and so forth. But I think in that situation, it's very important for, number one, you to make it clear from the beginning, if indeed you already knew this before you got married, so that level of expectation isn't there, and otherwise, you know, it could, you know, lead to quite a few problems.
Look. Let's separate the two, innit? Because you're talking about a man spending less time with his wife due to religious obligations. Does that make sense?
That's what I'm saying.
And to an extent, the religion does encourage that. For example, Allah just said that in your wives and your children, they are fitna. Does that make sense? Some companions were held back from doing hijrah because of their spouses and their children. And hijrah is a big thing. Like, a person who does hijrah is if he's a newborn.
I think we should do a whole topic on hijrah and the relationships. And
no, definitely, inshallah ta'ala, definitely.
So let's make that the next one.
We can do the next episode, inshallah, no problem. That's a big thing, and it's like some of the companions got held back because of that, because their wives and their children became a fitna for them. Does that make sense? Like, you know, like the munafiqeen, they didn't want to go out and battle, and they made their children and their wives, their families and their wealth an excuse. Does that make sense? To fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking knowledge. You know, there is sacrifice here. So of course you can. It's more understandable for a man to spend less time with his spouse if he's giving precedence to his religion over time with his spouse, but at the same time, not at the expense of his wife's rights,
her obligations.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not at the expense of his wife's rights. Not at the expense of his wife's
rights.
And we said, what does it mean to be good? It's urf determines it. So if the nature and the custom of these women is that they need a bit more time from their husbands, then you give it to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the problem is, bro, with men who don't give their wives time, and it's nothing to do with the deen. Does that make sense?
Just playing
Football,
PlayStation,
PS4,
football,
uh,
hanging around with the boys,
yeah, and
going out for
you know what the
munchies.
worst one is when they use the deen as a cover up. For example, he's in the masjid chilling with the brothers. So she's like, "Where are you?" I'm in the masjid, but we're never home. Fear Allah. Allah's first. I'm in the masjid. Bro, you're relaxing with the brothers.
Yeah.
Now, okay, but brotherhood is act of worship. But yeah, bro, wife is more important than your brothers right now. Because these brothers, like remember Allah Azza wa Jalla said.
I feel like brothers shy away from that because there's a stigma that if you spend time with your wife, like this guy he's soft and so on and so forth.
You know what it is? I'll be honest with you, this is something that I think should be a separate episode because it's a lot. But I don't respect men that their life goes out the window the moment they get married. As in their greatest aspiration was just to get married. We mentioned it in the last Child Mabai. There was the man called Jamil. And they told him, Jamil, go fight in the path of Allah. And he said, يقولون يا جميل جاهد بغزوة وأي جهاد غيرهن أريد. He said, they're telling me go and do jihad because what jihad do I want other than women? He just wanted to get married. His jihad was wife, marriage. He said وكل شهيد عندهن قتيل وكل قتيل عندهن شهيد. Every time a man who dies, in the path of a woman, he died as a martyr. Like he just wants to die with his wife, happy with him. His greatest goal in life is wife. That's sad.
Of course.
And I don't rate that. And I don't think that should be rated in society and whatnot. But then at the same time, bro, like you got this wife at home who you married her. Allah said, وَكَيْفَ تَأْخُذُونَ وَقَدْ أَفْضَى بَعْضُكُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْكُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. You took a mighty contract. But this is not like this is مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. It's a big, strong, ironclad contract. This nikah contract between you and your wife. There's rights to be fulfilled. What contract do you have with your boys? With the brothers? You don't have a contract like that with them. Go to your wife. Treat her well. Spend time with her. Does that make sense? Like this, wallahi. And you know what it is? The Prophet ﷺ spent a lot of time with his wives, man. But he also didn't spend a lot of time with them. In the sense where he did what he needed to. He went to do jihad. He, was giving da'wah. But
he had the perfect balance, basically.
But when he was at home, he was with his wives. He gave them time.
And we can't do it with one.
We can't do it with one.
Prophet had 11.
11. And not at the same time.
Not
9 at the same time, yeah. Like for example, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said the Prophet ﷺ when he was at home, كان في خدمة أهله. Okay, he used to be in the service and the aid of his
family.
What did he do? Look at the Prophet spending time. He's with his wife and he's going to battle. He tells the army move forward so that they can race. He moved an entire army just so he could spend quality time with his wife. And he did that twice. Not just that, another benefit is that the Prophet every time he would travel, what would he do?
Take one of his wives.
Take one of his wives. Where's he traveling to? Jihad. He's going on military expeditions. He would take a wife. Why? Scholars took a benefit. They said one of the wisdoms behind taking a wife when you travel is that your wife will grow with you. Because when you travel, what do? You learn, you develop. Alhamdulillah.
It's like they're saying that you don't truly know a person until you've traveled with them,
yeah,
done business with them,
and lived with them.
And
lived with them, yeah.
And lived with them.
I think Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu was the one who said that. So now by traveling with them, you're going to see a whole different dynamic to this relationship. Not just that, you're growing when you travel. Like me, alhamdulillah, I've traveled so much in my life. Communities, cultures, places. I've seen landscapes. I've seen time zones. I've been to a place where the sun never sets for 24 hours in a day. I've been into, I've seen cold, I've seen heat, you've seen desert, you've seen mountains, you've seen snow-capped mountains. You've seen it all. You grow. A guy who's traveled and a woman who's traveled is not like one who hasn't. So the point is that when you grow, as a person, if your wife's not growing, you also grow apart now.
Yeah, it's true.
Does that make sense? So by traveling and spending time, you keep growing together. And a man who doesn't spend time with his wife ends up being a man who grows apart from his wife. Does that make sense? Like you're changing. Like when you don't spend time, remember everyone's on their journey. You're on a journey, she's on a journey. And you need to be on that journey together. That's why a year later of not spending much time, you're like, we're different people. Because you didn't spend time with her. Does that make sense? To the point the Prophet would spend time with his wives. He's doing jihad.
Yeah. Because you got some guys they'll be planning like 3-4 trips a year with the mandem, with the brothers, going to this place, going to that place, going to this place. But with your wife, it's kind of like, oh honey, yeah, next time, next year maybe. Right now finances are a bit tight.
And
or
some trips are important. I understand. Like for example, like as in you are mentally.
you can't be always going.
Look, it's refreshing for a guy to have a trip where he just goes with the lads.
No doubt. I wasn't saying that. I'm saying if you've got 4 or 5 trips a year.
Sometimes I can understand for work, it may not be conducive to take your wife. Because,
of course.
Because of expenses, this, that, and the other. But I can't undermine the fact that the Prophet was working. One of the greatest jobs was jihad fi sabilillah. He still took his wife. So you got to find a way to fit her in somehow. You got to find a way. You know what I'm saying? You got to really find a way, man. I clocked something. You know my dad, yeah? You've seen, okay, my dad, whenever he travels, he takes my wife. You know what the benefit of that is? My wife, my mum's, he doesn't say my wife, he takes his wife. He takes my mum. Yeah. And one of the benefits of that is that my mum, like, really, and like, they're side by side, isn't it?
Yeah, along better. Well, it's true.
Do you know what I'm saying?
It's true.
As in, they think the
Along
same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That happens when you spend that time. So definitely you need to spend time with your spouse, man. Come on, bro. It's not the same way. It's not manly to just, just always be under her thumb, bro. It's not manly. It's not manly to just leave her hanging, bro. It's not a manly thing to just always be with their guys, Like, as in, what are you doing? You're not growing with them. You're still a kid. To be honest, always being with the guys at the expense of your obligations is actually a very kid-like behavior, bro. Does that make sense? Like I said, a lot of times, you know what it is? It comes down to balance. It comes down to perspective. It comes down to communication. Like, for example, with this lockdown, I know, like, my wife came to me and said to me, we are spending too much time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was like, really? I said, you sure? Because I'm about to go then. I said, if you give me that license, I said, I'm about to go then. The point that I'm dropping.
I think lockdown was a big shock for a lot of people because now they're spending a lot more time together. They're kind of like, okay, so what do you do?
Yeah. My wife even told me, she's like, listen, brother, give me my space. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the point of that is balance. Time, place, the point of life. Maybe your wife's going through something, you need to give her some more time. If she's sick, you might give her more time than usual. If she's going through something, mental health, had a baby, like something different things. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Also, she might be a person who just doesn't really want much time. Maybe she wants a bit more time. It's about finding the balance. And you're not gonna get that answer through one podcast. We hope that through consistently watching Relationship Goals, you genuinely get, because right now, like I said, sometimes, like I remember I was speaking to one brother and I said he watched a video, one of the videos on Knowledge College, which is My Big Fat Muslim Wedding. It goes through the rulings of nikah. So one of the things we talked about mahar was about how the mahar shouldn't be great mahar, and the statement of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where he was like, if having a high dowry was something of virtue in this world, then the Prophet ﷺ's wives and his daughters would have been married for a dowry which is high, but the dowry was to the equivalent nowadays less than £500. In fact, quite a lot less than £500. I don't remember the exact number. So I remember he told me, he was like, so he came to me asking about the dowry because he get married, and I was like, Akhi, make sure you give your wife a good dowry, And he was like, yeah, I'm thinking like, like £400, £500. I was like, give her like a good £2,000, bro. What are you talking about, bro? You work a long bit, you got some savings, but give her a good dowry, bro. He goes to me, but no, you said, I remember I watched your course. I learned from you. You said the dowry should be less.
It comes down to her though, innit? What she wants.
Right. So then he goes to me, did you change your opinion? I said, no, I haven't changed my opinion. But the point is that sometimes there's a general ruling and there's a specific ruling. And you know what I'm saying? And it's like, as in, for example, I'm telling you, in that video I was dealing with a issue, which is parents who compel their daughters to get married on a disgusting dowry when the man can't afford it. And even £2,000, if you can't afford it, don't worry, no one's gonna afford it. As in, it's different, but he could afford it. Does that make sense? But at the same time, a good dowry is good because, and like I said, a good dowry changes from place to place.
I feel like a lot of the time, sisters will feel pressured to come with a low dowry because of the stigma around it.
It's disgusting.
When, as long as it's not too high, you should have a rough idea of the guy's finances.
No, in the UK, £1,500 to £2,000, £2,500 is not too bad because, like, look, like Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was talking in the context of the dowry was so big that even after he's married you, he's still having to pay it off. You know, like as in, you're married a year, 2 years later, he's still looking at you thinking, I'm still paying off my dowry. Because, you made him take out a riba loan from the bank. You know what I'm saying? But I'm saying, like, if you have to work maybe 2-3 months to save up a bit, put it aside. Do you know why? It shows a bit more commitment. Because actually nowadays, a lot of men, they get married. And because the nikah process is so easy, so cheap. Like, when you do the nikah religiously, you're not going to hire out a mad hall and you're not going to spend crazy amounts and getting cars and you're going to say dowry is going to be a Kinder Bueno. I know, brother married his wife for a Kinder Bueno, akhi. Does that make sense? Yeah, bro, it's not like he couldn't get more. Does that make sense?
Or more Kinder Buenos.
I think he could have, the pack Sammy got me, at least get her a pack of Kinder Buenos. They're from the pound shop. For £1, you get a pack. You bought one. Less than 60, 70p.
So he actually wasn't too business savvy either then, was he?
Yeah, I'm saying, like, he literally just got her a Kinder Bueno. Does that make sense? So and what happens, like, these can easily be divorced. Because it's like there's not much commitment.
It's light. It was easy to get in, it's easy to get out.
Does that make sense? Now, I also differ with some parents will tell you, make sure the dowry is 20k because he's not going to leave you then. That's bad. Yeah. Because you'll struggle to find her, get married in the first place. He's going to regret paying off the dowry even though when he's with her. And let's say he really wants to leave her, the marriage is toxic. Now he's thinking, well, to be honest, I spent 20k, I can't leave. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's not healthy for him, it's not healthy for her, it's not healthy for the kids.
There's that balance, like, you know what I'm saying? So my point was that you heard me say one thing.
And if she asked for khula, she got to give the dowry back.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Imagine you spent that money. Where you putting that 20 bags from, bro?
She wants to leave, but where's she going to get the 20k from? He's saying, I want my khula back, my dowry back. So my point, the matter is, khula is basically where the husband, he divorces the wife can't divorce, but she requests khula.
So she takes it to a judge and the judge decides the case. But if he does judging the fact that she has to, then it depends. I think it depends, right? If they've consummated the marriage, she gets half back.
Let's leave that. Let's not, because the questions are going to start popping in for that. Let's do a separate episode on khula, inshallah. I really want to do a separate episode on khula, inshallah.
No,
but the point of the matter is that everything is, as in, sometimes it's a general ruling, specific ruling, time, place, changes, this, that. Sometimes in my mind, I'm dealing with an issue, so I'm mentioning one thing. I'm dealing with another issue, so I'm mentioning another thing. Does that make sense? You might see another video on relationship goals, and I'm saying, bro, spend time with your wife. And you might make it seem like I'm trying to say, spend all the time with her. But it's the balance. So the point is that you can't expect to learn a lifetime of experience or, years of experience in an hour podcast. Does that make sense? So keep watching relationship goals, keep seeking knowledge, keep learning nikah. The scholars have ahkam, they have books that they've written on rulings pertaining to marriage, but then there's books pertaining to ishra, which is living with your wife. There's things that you need to know, which is the rulings of marriage, but then there's living in a marriage. That's a whole separate subject, you know that, right? There's fiqh al-usra, there's fiqh al-nikah, and there's fiqh al-ishra. There's the fiqh, the rulings pertaining to nikah, the right, spouse, this, that. Then there's rulings pertaining to living. But that's even something that we've hardly even touched on this show.
Oh, is it?
We hardly even get into fiqh al-ishra.
I assume because most of the people who watch are unmarried. And for them it's more about the whole pre-marriage.
But they need to know, because they need to before they get married. Does that make sense? Now, for example, we're almost 30 episodes in, and that's what we need to talk about, beautification, this, that. You know what I'm saying?
That's where the problem lies. You know how you mentioned earlier about people just rush to get married. So they learn everything that they need to do before marriage, and they think, okay, the stuff I need to know during marriage, I'll learn it once I get married. But once you get married, it's like you're already into it now. So it's too late to learn it now. So you have to learn it beforehand.
100%. So inshallah, with that said, I'll let you conclude, but just a reminder to make use of the Sunnah Match promo code. It's called GOALS. That's it. Is back or are back? Goals are back. Whatever it is written down there, click the link below, inshallah ta'ala. 60% off for the lifetime access on Sunnah Match. Peace.
Barakallahu feek. Thank you for watching. See you guys on the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.